This month I'm in Los Angeles, California to continue my new series I've been planning for a while. A series about people who burned bright, lived fast, and left the world way too soon. Hey y'all, my name is Nick and I travel across North America in search of famous graves and dark history locations. Welcome to episode number 3 of my 8-part series, Too Young to Die. Over the next few weeks, we'll be discussing the life, careers, and deaths of some of Hollywood's elite figures, visiting their graves and death sites. The one thing all 8 of these people have in common, they all died 40 years old or younger. So if you haven't seen episode 1 and 2, make sure you go check those out where we feature Marilyn Monroe and Paul Walker. Today in episode 3, we're featuring someone whose death sparked conspiracies, Brittany Murphy. She was only 32 years old. Today, we're going to retrace her story, from the movies that made her famous to the house where everything ended. And at the end of the video, we'll pay her a visit at her gravesite. I feel like Brittany Murphy was one of those actresses who just seemed to be everywhere in the 90s and early 2000s. And she was, in Girl Interrupted, Clueless, 8 Mile with Eminem. I mean, she was everywhere, big movies. And then all of a sudden, she was gone. Brittany Murphy passed on December 20th, 2009 inside her Hollywood Hills home. The official cause was pneumonia, with severe iron deficiency, anemia, and multiple medications listed as contributing factors. But almost immediately, people began questioning everything. Everyone, welcome to Forest Lawn Memorial Park. You're just outside of Los Angeles. Brittany Murphy is buried here next to her husband, and we're going to go see her gravesite. But before we do, I want to tell you her story, her life, career, and we're going to also go see some other locations in this video. At a young age, she and her mother moved to Los Angeles so she could pursue acting. She didn't fit the traditional Hollywood mold, and that uniqueness became her advantage. In 1995, Brittany Murphy would land the role as Tay in Clueless, and that role made her unforgettable. Then came Girl Interrupted, and one of my favorite movies, she played alongside Eminem in 8 Mile. And with these roles, she proved she wasn't just a comic relief actor. She had a lot of depth and a lot of different ways she can go in acting. By the early 2000s, Brittany Murphy was everywhere. She was in romantic comedies, dramas, voice acting, even on King of the Hill. She had range, but I think behind the scenes, there were signs things weren't stable. There was noticeable weight loss, health concerns, tabloid pressure, and as I'm sure some of you may know, Hollywood can be relentless. Brittany Murphy's career is interesting because she wasn't someone who slowly faded away from Hollywood. Her story wasn't about an actress who disappeared from the spotlight and was forgotten. It was almost the opposite. She had already proven herself. She had already reached the point that many actors spend their entire careers chasing. She had the major movies, she had the recognition, she had the talent. But sometime during the later part of the 2000s, people began noticing that something about Brittany seemed different. The confident, energetic actress audiences remembered from movies like Clueless and 8 Mile started appearing less frequently. There were the rumors, there were the headlines, there were questions even about her health. And because Hollywood has always been fascinated with the rise and fall of young stars, Every photograph, every interview, and public appearance became something people analyzed. I think looking back at it today, it's impossible to know exactly what was happening behind closed doors. But what we do know is that the final years of Brittany Murphy's life were surrounded by uncertainty. And that uncertainty would only grow after her death. All right, y'all, so right now we are going to briefly leave the cemetery and we're going to drive into the true Hollywood hills of California to the death house of Brittany Murphy and her husband. We'll talk more about it there. It should be an interesting drive. I'm going to include some driving shots so you guys can see how absolutely crazy it is to try and drive through this. I'm a little nervous, if I'm being honest, but we'll see. Just gotta hope I don't get kicked out of any private areas. So with that being said, let's get in the car and we will head to the former home of Brittany Murphy. I'm on my way to Brittany Murphy's house and I had to get out and stop here to show you guys this. I don't have my microphones on, so the sound's probably gonna be a little bit different just for this part, but I could not stop and get this view. Let me show you. It's currently on this very winding path through the Hollywood Hills. But look how high up we are. Wow. It is very hard to drive through these hills, especially with a big car and other cars that are used to it, so they just fly around. And I'm not, so this is, wow, what is with all these cars right now? Gosh. Crazy. Yeah, this is not easy, so hope you guys are enjoying this. On December 20th, 2009, Brittany Murphy collapsed in the bathroom of her home. To understand why Brittany Murphy's death became such a mystery, you have to understand the timing. In 2009, Brittany was only 32 years old. She wasn't an elderly person battling years of illness. She wasn't someone the public expected to suddenly disappear. I mean, really, she was still young, she was still recognizable, and many people still remembered her as one of Hollywood's brightest young actresses. That's what made the news so shocking. When reports first came out that Brittany Murphy had died, many people were confused. How does someone who appears healthy, someone who is still young, suddenly die inside their own home? And almost immediately, people began searching for answers. She went into cardiac arrest and was transported to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where she was pronounced dead. She was 32 years old. As you can imagine, the days following Brittany's death became a media storm. Fans wanted answers. The entertainment world was stunned, and investigators began looking into what exactly happened during her final hours. Now, according to reports, Brittany had been experiencing symptoms before her death, including flu-like symptoms and difficulty breathing. Her mother later stated that Brittany had been sick in the days leading up to her collapse. And this is where the story becomes complicated, because while the official explanation pointed toward pneumonia and anemia, many people struggled to understand how those conditions could become fatal so quickly. For some, the official explanation answered the question, but for others, it created more questions. And that gap between what was officially reported and what people emotionally felt they understood is where many of the theories surrounding Brittany Murphy's death began. Oh my word. Well, we've made it to Brittany Murphy's house. It's right behind me, and I would not recommend doing this drive. I don't know how people do it. It was so hard. Oh my God, that has to be one of the worst drives I've ever done. It takes like an hour to go a few miles just because it's so nuts, and people drive like nuts in here because they're used to it. But man, anyway, let's go check out our house. Wow. Now, supposedly it is said that Britney Spears lived in this house before Brittany Murphy. It's right up over here, so I'll show you when we get up there. But Britney Spears said it was haunted, and she literally like ran out of the house screaming, wouldn't go back for her stuff because it was so haunted. And honest to God, when I first heard about Brittany Murphy's death, I was like, it has to be the ghost related. Is it like demon stuff? I don't know, but that very interesting fact for you. This is where, inside this house, which we cannot see at all, but it's through those bushes, Brittany Murphy died from what was officially ruled untreated pneumonia and a combination of prescription and over-the-counter medications. The crazy part about this story is literally 5 months later, Brittany Murphy's husband, Simon Monjack, died in the same house of like the same causes. And that's where all these conspiracies and stuff came from. It's like, what is going on? There you could see the top of the house a little bit, but yeah, 2 adults, same house, same medical explanation. And that's where the mystery really begins because of the similarities. If you know this case and are into this story, I'm sure you've heard of this, but for those of you who haven't, we'll talk about it right now. So one of the biggest theories involved toxic mold inside the home. The mold theory became one of the most talked about parts of this entire story. The reason it gained so much attention was because of one very unusual detail. And that is 5 months after Brittany died, her husband, Simon Monjack, also died inside the same house. For many people watching from the outside, that was the detail they could not get past or ignore. Think about that. 2 people, same home, similar medical findings. And because of that, some people immediately began asking whether something inside the house could have played a role. I mean, the home itself became almost a character in this entire story. It's a beautiful Hollywood Hills property overlooking Los Angeles, a place that from the outside represented success and luxury. But it was inside that house, 2 lives would end within months of each other. And that contrast is what made the story feel so unsettling. Some believed the environmental contamination could explain why 2 people developed fatal respiratory illnesses in the same place. However, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office stated there were no conclusive indicators that mold caused either death. Now, despite all of this, the mold theory has never completely gone away. Other theories included poisoning or foul play, though official autopsies did not support those claims either. Now, here's kind of where I want to be careful. The official cause of death for the both of them is documented, but when a couple dies in the same house within 5 months of each other, it definitely raises questions like what is going on here and what is going on with this house. I think one of the most fascinating parts about the Brittany Murphy case is the difference between a mystery and a conspiracy. A mystery means there are things that we still want to understand. A conspiracy means believing there was a hidden explanation behind those events. If you look throughout history, famous deaths have often created both. When someone young and talented dies unexpectedly, especially someone who seemed like they still had so much ahead of them, people naturally search for a bigger explanation. And it's just part of being human. We struggle with sudden endings and struggle with the idea that someone can be here one day and gone the next. And in Brittany's case, that feeling was amplified because audiences felt they knew her. They watched her grow on screen. They laughed with her characters. They connected with her performances. So when she died at only 32 years old, many people weren't just mourning an actress. They were mourning someone who felt familiar. But when two people die in the same house from similar causes within 5 months of each other, it raises questions. Was it environmental? Was it medical neglect? Was it something that was preventable? Or was it simply a tragic coincidence that feels darker than it actually was? One of the hardest questions surrounding Brittany Murphy's death is whether something could have been done differently. Her official cause of death listed conditions that, while serious, caused many people to wonder how they became so fatal. Could medical attention have changed the outcome? I don't know. Were warning signs missed? I don't know. Were there things happening privately that the public never knew about? These are questions people have asked for years. But the difficult part about looking back at a tragedy like this is that we are viewing it after the fact. We already know the ending and we know the outcome. But the people living through those final days did not know what was coming. They were not looking at the situation knowing that it would become one of Hollywood's most discussed mysteries. They were simply living through what they believed was an illness. And that is what makes stories like this so complicated. I'm not here to push conspiracies, but I'm just here to, acknowledge that people still talk about this case today. These are mega homes in the Hollywood Hills. 1895 Rising Glen. Look at this. But the house is like impossible to see from here, but this was her driveway. Obviously private. There's a little bit of the house. If I zoom in right there, you could see. I'll see if we go down, if we can see it at all. This was Brittany Murphy's driveway. And this is where it happened. One of the biggest reasons this story has remained alive for so many years is because Brittany's death was followed by another tragedy that felt almost impossible to explain. Her husband, Simon Monjack, died only 5 months later. Before this happened, Brittany Murphy's death was already shocking. But when Simon died, inside the same house, people immediately began connecting the two events. And from that moment forward, the house on Rising Glen Road became one of the most talked about celebrity locations in all of Los Angeles. To many people, it represented something darker than a normal Hollywood tragedy. It became the place where two people lost their lives in a short period of time. But behind all the headlines and speculation were two real people. Brittany Murphy was a daughter. She was a friend. She was an actress who had spent her life entertaining millions of people. And Simon was a person with his own complicated history. The reality is that their relationship and their health and their final months together have been analyzed for years. As I am standing here today, this neighborhood, this little group of homes, looks almost like any other home in the Hollywood Hills. There's quiet streets, beautiful views, a neighborhood filled with some of the most expensive properties in Los Angeles. From the outside, nothing about this place immediately tells you that it became connected to one of Hollywood's biggest mysteries. And maybe that is what makes locations like this so interesting. A building or a house can look completely ordinary, but the history that happened inside those walls can change the way people see it forever. For fans of Brittany, this is not just an address. This is the final chapter of her story. As best as we could, we've somewhat seen, at least the driveway of the house where Brittany Murphy and her husband died in. So with that being said, now let's head back to the cemetery to pay both of them our respects and, spend a little time with them this afternoon. After Brittany's death, Hollywood continued moving forward. Movies kept being released, new stars would emerge, the entertainment industry continued changing. But Brittany Murphy's legacy remained almost frozen in time. For many fans, she will always be remembered as the young actress with the unique voice, the unforgettable smile, and the ability to completely transform herself on screen. She can make people laugh, she can make them cry, and she could play characters who felt completely different from one another. And I think that versatility is what made her career special. Because even though Brittany Murphy's life ended so tragically and suddenly, her work never disappeared. Every time someone watches one of her movies, they are reminded of the talent she had and the potential that was still ahead of her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we are going to go up the hill and find the final resting place of Brittany Murphy. There is something about visiting the grave of someone who died young that always feels different. Normally, when we think about a person's final resting place, we think about a life that reached its natural conclusion. A long journey, a story that had time to fully unfold. But Brittany Murphy's story feels almost unfinished. At only 32 years old, there were still so many chapters that could have been written. More movies, performances, moments, and that is what makes her final resting place feel so emotional. Because when someone leaves the world too soon, we don't just think about what they accomplished. We often think about everything they still could have done. Minus the construction going on, the rest of the cemetery is very beautiful and quiet. And I was thinking about this earlier, but for someone who was so vibrant on camera and in films, she was like so energetic. Just a woman who was really alive on screen. It's kind of strange in a way, but not so strange how peaceful the cemetery is. Thanks to my friends at findagrave.com, I've found the exact location of where she should be. Now it's just a matter of finding the exact plot. Found them. This is the grave of Brittany Murphy. Well, Brittany Murphy Monjack to be exact. Born November 10th, 1977. Died December 20th, 2009. A precious daughter, wife, and angel to all. And then her husband, Simon Mark Monjack, born March 9th, 1970, died just a few months later, May 23rd, 2010. Beloved son, husband, father, Renaissance man, and all that jazz. I love that. That is cool. And Brittany Murphy has a beautiful angel there. If you watch, like go back and rewatch if you're a fan of Brittany Murphy, but if you watch 8 Mile with Eminem or Clueless, you can still like feel her presence today through the screen, and I think that's what made her so special. You know, she wasn't like a super polished actor, right? She felt like a real person through those characters, and I'm sure she was in real life. And it is just an honor to be here today. It's obviously sad because died, as well as her husband, just way too young. That might be the greatest reminder of Brittany Murphy. Her story did not end with headlines. It did not end with the question surrounding her death. And it did not end with the theories people continue debating online today. Her story continues every time someone discovers one of her movies for the first time. A new generation can watch Clueless. They can watch 8 Mile. They can hear her voice in King of the Hill. And for a moment, Brittany Murphy is alive again through the characters she created. That is the strange power of film. The person may be gone, but the performance remains. Brittany and Simon, it was nice to come and spend some time with you today and tell your story. Sorry for the way you died, but you definitely lived life to the fullest here on Earth. And I just want to thank you all for coming along and joining me on this journey here today with Brittany Murphy. The mystery surrounding Brittany Murphy's death may never completely disappear. People will continue asking questions. They will continue discussing the circumstances surrounding those final months. And maybe that is because at the center of all the theories and speculations, there is a much simpler story. A story about a talented young woman whose life ended far too early. A story about an actress who brought happiness to millions of people. And a story about how quickly everything can change. Because sometimes the greatest mystery is not how someone became famous. It is how someone who seemed to have so much life ahead of them could be gone so soon. Her performances live on. And sometimes that's the only immortality Hollywood gives you. Brittany Murphy was only 32 years old, but in those 32 years, she created characters that millions of people still remember today. She left behind performances that continue to introduce her to new audiences. And while her final chapter remains surrounded by questions, her life deserves to be remembered for more than how it ended. Because before the mystery, the headlines, the unanswered questions, there was an actress who made people feel something. And that is the part of Brittany Murphy's story that will last the longest. This has been the life and death story of Brittany Murphy, too young to die. Now, stay tuned for next episode number 4. We feature someone who's also buried at the same cemetery. Aaron Carter, one of the huge teen stars turn into a very sad and tragic life later on. But we feature him in episode 4. I hope to see you there, and thanks as always for watching.